Welcome to this lecture. In this lecture we will start UV unwrapping. We will start unwrapping the well we made some lectures before. And if you haven't seen me cut open a cardboard box some lectures before, go see that video, because without that it's pretty hard to understand what UV unwrapping actually is. Okay, let's open up Blender now. And here in recently opened files, open the model you made some lectures before. That's the well we made. And before we go UV unwrapping, we'll switch to another layout. So go to the top of the screen and let's go to the UV editing layout. And then let's make sure nothing is selected, but clicking Alt A when hovering over the viewport on the right side. And then here on the right side, you can see the UV editor. The UV editor is a placeholder for images. You can add a new image by clicking New here. And let's give it a name. Let's name it T for texture underscore well small underscore BC for base color. Oh, and let me remove this underscore here. That's not needed. Okay, small stands for small, of course, so we make a small texture of 256 pixels. So type in 256 in the width and the height. Color, black, that's fine. Alpha, you can turn it off. We don't need see-through parts in this mesh. And generate type is okay, 32-bit float, leave that off. That's all okay. So hit OK. And that gives us this nice black texture. So first you have to go to image here, then in this case save as, because we didn't save it yet. Then in the documents folder, we will save our image, and it already has a good name because we already gave that to the texture. So hit save. And now the image is saved. Let's save our project now. So let's go to File and do a Save As. And we are not modeling anymore, we are unwrapping the UVs now. So let's change the name to lecture 13, I think. And then well UV unwrapped. Then hit Save As. Okay, then let's hide the tool shelf in the 3D viewport by hitting T. Let's zoom in a bit. And we are already in edit mode, as you can see. That's good. So the first thing we'll do is we get the face here on the bottom. We are in face select mode. So we select it with the left mouse button and we delete that because we don't really need that. It's never in view and it's just extra geometry. So hit X and here under the delete menu, select faces. And that will delete that face. Then we'll go to edge select. We're either going to the menu or hitting 2 on the normal number keys. And then we'll select an edge on the side of the base. This one, for example. And then with shift, we'll select a second one. And the third one. And the last one on the edge of the base. So now we have all these side edges selected. Then hit Ctrl E, which gets us in the edge menu. As you can see, edge, it says it here. And then you go down and select Mark Seam here. Mark Seam. Then the seam shows up as a red one. And what it does is the same as what I did with the carton box. Because you need to make cuts first before you can open up the box and lay it down flat. So the same thing we are doing here. These seams are like the cuts we make in a carton box. And then with one of the edges selected, hit Ctrl L. And what that does, it selects everything that is connected to the edge in this mesh. When we look around, you can see only the connected topology is selected. Now when you look here in the UV editor, you can see that there's already a UV map unwrapped. And that is because in Blender 2.80 and up, the default mesh like a cube already comes with a UV map. But most of the times you don't have a cube and have a different shape, so you want to create your own UV map for that. It's perfectly normal if you don't get the concept of UV unwrapping yet. Just keep going and you'll understand along the way. Now hover over the 3D viewport and hit U for UV unwrapping and then select Unwrap. And then by magic you get a new cross here. And that represents the 5 faces of the base of the well. So let's go to the well. You know we have 5 faces here, as you can see when I turn around. We go to face select mode and select the top. You can see this is the top one, the side one, another side one, another side one, and another side face. The UV map now covers the complete texture, and that's something we'll fix later. It's also on a strange angle, but that'll come. Okay. Next up is the beams, but let's clean them up first before we start unwrapping. Let's first hit Alt-A to deselect everything. And then make sure you're on face mode. By either clicking 3 and have a look at this menu. And then with the middle mouse button, click on this menu and drag to the left. And here we have the X-ray button, turn that on. And have a look at this mesh here. Because on top of and bottom of the beams we have some faces that we can delete because they are never in view. So select these meshes with Shift to select multiple. And remember, click on the dots in the middle. And then hit X and delete faces. Now these faces are gone. We never see them, so that's good because it saves geometry and that's faster. Okay. Now first let's turn X-ray off again. Here, turn it off. And then with the middle mouse button drag to the right on this menu again and go to Edge Select Mode or hit the 2 to go to Edge Select Mode. And next is marking seams on the beams. And this brings me to the point where I have to explain that when you select the edges for seams, always select those that are mostly not in view. So in the case of these beams, the ones on the inner side are the ones that you see less. So select those, this one and that one, and go to front view. See, I chose the back ones just to make sure. When you look around, you can check if these are less in view than the ones on the outside or the ones in the front. Hit Ctrl E, mark seam, and we've marked the seams again. Hit Ctrl L to select everything that's connected. Ctrl L, and then a U for UV unwrap and unwrap. I see I left the operator panel open somewhere during recording, so let's close that. Never mind this. Okay, so we have 8 faces on these beams. And when you look at the UV map, you see 8 squares there as well. It's a bit hard to see now because they are connected. So when you go to Island Select Mode here and click on one of these faces, you'll select everything that's connected. So this is one beam. I'll hit G to move it around to show you that it's not connected to the other part. This is one beam. And when I select the other one, I can drag it around as well. Hit Ctrl Z. Next is the roof. Let's have a look. Let's hit Alt A to deselect everything first. And how can we treat this roof? I think we will have to treat it as if it's a cube. So the same as the base. It has more slanted top of course, but it's still similar to the cube. It still has the same faces and edges. So let's act as if it's a cube. Let's first select the bottom edges to separate the bottom, because the cube didn't have a bottom either, so we can separate it from the rest. Then let's select the side edges, the same as the side edges on the cube. Hit all the other ones with Shift, like so. Then hit Ctrl E and mark seam. Hit Ctrl L to select everything of this part of the mesh, and then U to UV unwrap. And there we have a nice UV map. The bottom part is now separated from the rest of the mesh, or the rest of the UV map. If we want, we can have that connected. Let me first go to front view by hitting 1 on the numpad, so that I'm sure that I have the front edge, because that's the most in view. Then we have to unmark this seam by selecting it and going Ctrl E, clear seam, and then Ctrl L to select everything, and U to UV unwrap again. So always try to keep parts of the mesh together when UV unwrapping. And maybe the UV maps we are creating now are not ideal. There's always room for improvement, but we're just starting out, so we'll keep things simple. It's just a start. And maybe you already noticed that only the things you've selected in the 3D viewport are the ones that you see in the UV map as well. So let's hit A to select all and see all UV maps. And as you can see, all the UV unwrapping we did now is kind of a mess, so let's clean that up. So with your mouse over the UV editor, hit A to select everything. And the first thing we'll do is get everything in the right proportion. So go to UV in the menu here, and then hit Average Island Scale. And that'll scale everything in the same proportions in the mesh. So to clarify, when you want to unwrap part of a model, it'll always try to use as much space as it can in the UV editor. So Blender will try to make the UV map as big as possible in the texture space available. When you do it with the separate parts, it'll just take one part and make that as big as possible, and all the UVs will be out of proportion. So with Average Island Scale, you can get everything back to proportion again, as in your mesh or your model. The next thing we'll do is go to UV and then select Pack Islands. And what that will do is it will place the UV maps in the texture space available. There is some room for improvement here. So after Pack Islands, you can go to the operator below here, open it up, and here you can do some fine tuning. So for example, you can turn off rotation. That'll keep everything in the same rotation as it was before you packed islands. We don't want a rotation like this, so we make sure we are on select island and then hit Alt A to deselect everything. Select this part again, hit R to rotate and hit 45 on the numpad and rotate under an angle of 45 degrees. So that it's straight up again. And maybe you ask yourself, why am I doing this? And that's because later on, when you start painting and you have something on a crooked angle like that, all the pixels will also be in an angle on the model. It'll become more obvious later on, so don't worry, I'll explain it again in a later phase. Now when we packed islands, and I'll do that again, follow along with me, the UV maps are a little bit close together. So here at margin, we can for example put it in 0.1 and then we'll have more distance in between the UV islands. So after that we can start puzzling and make sure you are on island select. So the idea is that we use as much texture as possible. So just divide it over the texture we have. In this case, because we have so little parts, it's pretty hard to use all the texture space, but just scale it up a bit, scale it down a bit, and well, try as best as you can. Yeah, I'm a bit too big now, so I'll have to scale it back again. So make it smaller and try to keep everything in the same scale. So I'm doing it wrong here, but well, for now it doesn't really matter, but okay, so just place it nicely divided over the texture you have. Something like this. It's not ideal, but just to start with again, and we're learning, so this is good for now. Okay, that's it for UV unwrapping. It's, well, kind of as simple as that, isn't it? It's not that hard. Maybe you heard stories about UV unwrapping is boring, but I think it's fun. I like the puzzling aspect of it, and well, I just don't hate it. Maybe people do, I don't. The image doesn't need to be saved because we didn't really change the image, but you can still save it here if you want. And then file and save your project. And that's it. That's UV unwrapping. So, great job, and see you in the next lecture again. Bye bye.